welcome to this Storybuilder video tutorial. The title of this tutorial is Wormy and the Carpenter. So now you understand the basic structure of the bowtie and the specifics of how barriers work, it's time to use the bowtie for its intended purpose, which is to display accidents in the form of linear path through the bowtie itself, like so. To get here, by the way, I've simply clicked the Paths tab here and selected a path from this list, which is all part of the database which comes with Storybuilder. So here you see a path representing an accident highlighted in red and green. Green means that some parts of the path are hidden. We can make the whole path visible by clicking on this See Path button. Now I'm just going to zoom out so we can see the full path in all its glory. I can use the invisibility button to show just the boxes that this path passes through, like so, but for now we're going to keep the whole structure visible. This path tells the story of a carpenter who ended up injuring his left eye due to contact with flying broken glass. This is why we are in the bowtie for contact with flying or ejected objects, the flying object in this case being the broken glass. Now, to help me tell the story of this carpenter in more detail, I'm going to ask for help from my friend Wormy by clicking the demo button and asking him to walk along the path for me. So here he comes, and we'll just zoom in on him. Wormy starts here with the activity of the victim, who in this case was dismantling windows to separate the wood from the glass so each could be stored separately, hence engaging in dismantlement activities. Wormy then passes over incoming bowties, as no other accidents led to this one, and moves on to tell us some information about the victim, such as nationality, he was a Dutch carpenter, but we have no data about his language skills, so those are unknown. Next, Wormy tells us about the equipment involved in the activity which led to the accident. In this case, we're dealing with a window and window frame, which are found in buildings. Specifically, windows are categorized as building parts. And lastly, Wormy specifies windows, the type of object itself. Next, Wormy moves on to the force behind the ejection of the object. The carpenter was dismantling windows with a claw hammer, so Wormy says that the force behind the flying glass was a mechanical impact. Wormy next tells us that the regulations violated in this accident fall under the Working Conditions Decree, specifically Article 3.17, Avoiding Danger of Moving Objects. Wormy now is about to come to the first barrier group. I'm going to have to slow down Wormy here because we need to scroll right first to see what barrier has actually failed before Wormy can show us how that barrier failed. In this case, the carpenter's choice of tool, the short claw hammer, led not only to the flying glass but also to the carpenter being much too close to the glass when it broke. The barrier failure we are looking at is therefore the Equipment Tool Selection Failure BFM. So, now we go back to Wormy to ask, how did this happen? Well, the company the carpenter worked for had no instructions regarding how to separate glass from wooden frames, so the workers found their own methods. In the management deliveries, this falls under the Plans and Procedures Management Delivery Failure, because no procedure was defined for this task. Speaking of tasks, next we have the underlying task failure leading to the failure of the barrier itself. In this example, the victim chose an unsafe tool to break the glass, which classifies as a use failure. Next, human error. Our carpenter chose the wrong tool, which is a mistake. However, it is a knowledge-based mistake because his company had no regulation window dismantlement methods in place, so he simply didn't know what the safe tool to use would have been. From here, the incident factor and barrier failure modes choose themselves. Wormy then shows us how this barrier failure leads directly to the loss of control event, in which the glass was launched from the window. Specifically, this is ejected parts after disintegration, because a piece of glass was launched toward the victim after the pane was disintegrated by the hammer. So, now Wormy is going to walk us through the next barrier, the next line of defense, protection. Which barrier failed that meant our carpenter was not protected from the broken glass? And it turns out, not only was our victim using the wrong tool for the job, he was also not wearing the safety glasses that his employer had provided and that were required for use during work that included potential danger to the eyes. Our path therefore passes through the no protective equipment barrier failure mode. So, how did this failure occur, Wormy? Well, the carpenter underestimated the risk involved, so Wormy passes through the motivation and awareness management delivery failure because management had not ensured that he had sufficient awareness for the risk at hand according to the safety criteria given by his employer. In tasks, Wormy passes through the operate and use task failure because the carpenter did not use the barrier provided, in this case the safety glasses. We come again to human error. For our carpenter, the error of not using his safety glasses was a violation of instructions to do so. However, it is a situational violation because he did normally use them, but in this situation had forgotten them at another worksite. Again, the incident factors are fairly obvious. The carpenter did not use eye protection or any other personal protective equipment, which led directly to the barrier failure. The subsequent loss of control event then occurred when the victim entered the danger zone, getting close to the glass he was to break without wearing any protective equipment. Finally, because both the preventative and the protective barriers failed, contact was made with a flying object, the broken glass. Wormy now moves into the right-hand side of the bow tie. No other accidents occurred as a result of this one, so there are no outgoing bow ties, and he moves straight into the emergency response barrier. In this case, there was adequate emergency response, so Wormy passes through the barrier success mode box. Next, the dose determining factors of the carpenter's accident. In this case, the victim was hit by and pierced by a piece of glass, which is in the category hit by, which defines the type of contact. We then move on to the size of the piece of glass, which is unknown. We then have ejected object specification, and glass isn't listed, so Wormy passes through other. And finally, when we come to specify the nature of the flying object, we define the piece of glass as a flying missile. We now move out of dose determining factors into the body part that was injured, which was the carpenter's left eye, which is of course part of the head. We move from part of body injured to type of injury, and because the injury was to the victim's cornea, we classify this as superficial under wounds and superficial injuries. Due to his injury, the carpenter was hospitalized for 5 days, where he was treated and told after an operation on his eye that the prognosis was that he would eventually recover his sight 100% with time. Hence, under consequence class, our carpenter is probably non-permanently injured. Finally, the carpenter's 5 days in hospital mean he missed at least 5 days of work. We have no other information about his absence from work, so all we can put is that he missed more than 1 day. Well, thank you to Wormy for showing us that accident, and thank you for watching this tutorial. All accident paths pass through their respective bow ties in this way, and Wormy is always on hand to walk along paths for you via the demo button. Now, to learn how to enter your own path into Storybuilder, please watch the next video tutorial, Inputting Accident Data using Storybuilder Lite Part 1.